Okay, we are back now with our study. We're on page 48 of Sinu, Jesu. Now we're looking at Thursday, which is Holy Thursday, March 20th of 2008. Watching at the altar of repose. Now this is something that I think too, many laity, some of them do and some of them don't on Holy Thursday. Holy Thursday, by the way, in some parishes is the least attended Mass.
Really?
And Good Friday. I am close to you now, and you are close to me in the sacrament of my love. I accept your presence here tonight as an offering of friendship and reparation for the sake of all my. Tonight, I look for them. Now that the laity has to understand here. When you go, if you go to Holy Thursday Mass, as you know, there are two sacraments that are instituted that night. They are the two most important sacraments for the life heart of the church. It is the heart of the church. That's why I feel that Catholics should go to Mass on Holy Thursday. The Mass of the Lord's Supper. Because, first of all, Jesus ordains his priests. Secondly, he institutes the sacrament of his body, blood, soul, and divinity. And if you understand Holy Thursday, then you understand the events of Good Friday and Holy Saturday and Easter in its richness of liturgy. Okay? In the richness of liturgy and of faith. Now, if you are lucky enough, like Jim and a few others that would serve Mass that night for me, they understood the events because they are in the motion of the time. Okay? For example, the servers have to do this and this and this. It's what the apostles did at the Last Supper. So they are making the movement of the apostles. Now, a lot of priests don't even do that on Holy Thursday. Some of the things.
Why did we stop covering the statues and everything?
They can be covered. If you look in the Ordo, which is the directions for liturgy, it says the statues may be covered either with a red or purple veil. We did it at my parish. We covered the crucifix on the altar with a red veil. Yes?
Is it necessary to have the washing of the feet?
Yes. In some cases it's optional due to pastoral reasons, but yeah, it should be done. Because that is the ordination ceremony. This symbolizes what Christ did at the Last Supper. It was the first ordination, really. Part of the ordination ceremony.
Should it only be
Men.
instead of no women, right?
Because this is the sign of the priesthood.
Yeah.
So what occurs on Holy Thursday and the motions that the servers do is what the apostles did in the upper room. Okay, for example, the washing of the feet. Then following the liturgy, like following the Passover meal that Jesus did, they cleaned up. And that's what the servers do. They strip the altar. And everything is darkened. in that area. Because the movement now goes to the agony of the garden. So in that Holy Thursday liturgy, you see here what Jesus is saying to this monk. Tonight I look for them. I wait for each one to seek me out. I continue to yearn that my chosen ones, even those who have allowed their hearts to grow hard against me, will be converted tonight and find their way to my tabernacles where I wait for them. It's the Eucharistic adoration that now comes after the procession with the Blessed Sacrament. Now, as I say, some places don't even do that. But it shows the mark. In other words, the servers that are entrusted to serving that liturgy are acting as the apostles that are leading Christ now. Peter, James, that they go to the garden. So you have the three servers processing with the priest with the Blessed Sacrament. They represent Peter, James, and John. Going to now where the altar of repose is, there's Jesus now in his agony in the garden. The night watch. Until midnight, when he is arrested. Then when you come on Good Friday, the church is completely barren. Nothing. Even the altar of repose is gone. The Blessed Sacrament is moved to the priest's sacristy, to a proper place. All the altars are completely bare. There's nothing in the church. Then, if you notice here, there are graces destined for my priest in this night of my agony and of my betrayal. I am bound tonight. I have already been taken. My captors led me away as a lamb to the slaughter. I am silent, but my heart watches and waits for my priests. If only they would come to me, I would undo the bonds that hold them in slavery. I would give them the light of the spiritual darkness that oppresses them. I would speak to them words of comfort and compassion. There in footnote number 3, he's referring to Psalm 84. Let's take a look at that. Psalm 84, verse 9.
Father, I had a question to the Old Testament readings, build up to the New Testament. When the lentil, the blood was on the porches and the sacrificial offering by the Jewish people with the lamb.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Moses sprinkling blood over the altar. And it's like connecting the dots up to the new covenant with Christ. Which is it's so powerful because it gives us good background to understand what's taking place at the Last Supper.
Yes, the Passover meal, the Seder, Passover supper, is the Eucharist at Christ. That's what Christ did at the Last Supper. Yeah, that's the institution of the Eucharist. For the Jews, it's the Passover.
Right.
Okay.
Father,
So Psalm 84. Yes.
I suggest a book by Jesus and the Jewish roots of the Eucharist. Oh my goodness.
Oh yes, that has been a standard for years. So if you haven't read that book, please do so. Okay, Psalm 84, verse 9. Lord of hosts, hear my prayer. Listen, God of Jacob. So it's the prayer. It's the offering of prayer which is the element here of the agony of the garden. Remember Jesus' prayer. Father, let this cup pass from me. All of these things signify the power of prayer that is given to the priests. And in this night watch, if they make this adoration with the laity, it signifies the unity of what's taking place in that agony of the garden. Many priests, I know we did it in my parish in PA, what we would do after the liturgy, we would have people, groups of people assigned to so many hours, till midnight. They would come, like maybe 20, 30 in a group. So the first group would be there from the end of Mass, let's say until 8:30. Then the second group would come in. Then the third group, and then the last group. With the last group, then I would come out to the center of the altar of repose, and then we would read the trial of Jesus, the arrest and trial of Jesus. How they came with clubs and swords, and then brought him to the praetorium. Then after we finished reading that, then that group would help then clear the altar. Take the flowers and everything away as I remove the Blessed Sacrament to the sacristy. Then they would stay until midnight. And they would read the Psalms of David. And then at midnight, then we would leave and then close the church. Some parishes do that. It shows the unity of what's taking place, not only in the agony of the garden, but what's gathering in the praetorium yard of Pontius Pilate. Because you read the next day on Good Friday what occurs. The crowd's already gathered. They gathered at night. It was the high priest. Remember, if you see the film, what is it now? The Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
They show that one priest gathering the people at night. They're warming themselves at the fire, and that's when the one lady says to Peter, "You were with him." No, I wasn't, and so on. But the crowd's already at the portico. So that this guy is telling them when Pilate brings Jesus out in the morning, ask for Barabbas. You recall that scene? Mm-hmm. Then when they bring out Jesus and Barabbas, the crowd shouts, "Give us Barabbas." And the others were pushed aside. They're shouting Jesus, and the crowd was pushing them away. Some of them were even being beaten. So even then, the persecution started. Do you follow this? That's why Holy Thursday is so important. Because it leads you into the in-depthness of the Eucharistic Christ. And what happens? It was the preparation for persecution. Not only of the followers of Jesus, but of Christ himself, who would be the focal point now for the Christian community. His passion, death, and resurrection.
Father,
Yes, Alex.
somebody pointed out it was kind of weird that Barabbas was the one, because his name is Barabbas, son of the Father.
Yes.
What a twist on words.
Yes, and in that one movie, the fact the film Barabbas, if you recall that one scene where after the death of Jesus, Barabbas goes around wandering. He goes into the Christian sector. And he says, they ask him, what are you doing here? What do you want? And he says, he died in my place. And the one Christian turns to him and says, well, who are you? How could he die in your... He says, I am Barabbas, son of the Father. Then, if you recall, Anthony Quinn, then he's arrested again by the Romans, put into the arena. He refuses to kill. And then he is led away. He's given his freedom again after he kills this other man because he killed this Christian. Do you recall there? They take him out, put him against a pillar, and spear him to death. His friend, this Christian, he takes his body, takes him to Peter. That's when the conversion of the Father takes place, because he hears them praying the Our Father. And he follows them in the catacombs. And he shouts out, I'm lost, I'm lost. And then at the end, when he finds out what the meaning of the Father is about, how does he die? He dies the same way as Jesus, nailed to a cross. And then he says at the end, I am Barabbas. Father, forgive me. That point that Alex brought up is very, very important, because a lot of people don't know that. If you read the Roman history, or if you follow that film, you'll see it. But the translation, yes, it's interesting. It's interesting because it all fits in to that mode of the Passion of Christ. So we see how conversions, suffering, pain, and execution lead to the glory of the church. Okay. And thus, as he points out here, you beginning with me tonight allows me to touch the souls of many priests who have strayed away. Now, like he pointed out, when you look at this, and you look at Good Friday, the relationship that ties this in is that bond of what happens on Good Friday with the relationship of priesthood. Jesus, the high priest, will be crucified, the lamb that was slain. But let's look here at John chapter 6, verse 44. John chapter 6, verse 44. Okay, chapter 6, verse 44. Okay. No one can come to me unless the Father draw him. And I will raise him on the last day. It is written in the prophets. Now, going back to what Alex pointed out, who goes to the Father but the man whom they asked to be released, Barabbas? He goes and searches out the Father. He searches out this dead man whom they call Christ. And then he learns from Peter about the faith and what he must do. And then when they tell him about the second coming, what does Barabbas do? He goes and he's helping burning the city of Rome, because he thought this was the second, he thought this is what he had to do. And then finally someone tells him, no, that's not how it's going to be. So he's arrested thrown into jail with the other Christians, makes a conversion of faith, prays to the Father, and is crucified like Christ.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So now you see why here in John we see that phrase. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draw him, and I will raise him on the last day. So it's the power and the glory of the Father. Then he says here, I'm about to renew. Now you see what's coming. Page 49. I am about to renew the priesthood of... I am very close to cleansing my priests. Them. Soon, very soon, I will pour out graces of spiritual healing upon all my priests. I will separate those who will accept the gift of my divine friendship from those who will be hardened and have hardened hearts against me. So here's the cleansing. So Jesus himself is saying this 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago.
Wow.
So it has come. To the first, I will give the radiant holiness like that of John and of my apostles in the beginning. So in other words, this renewed priesthood and bishopric is going to be like that of St. John, pure and undefiled, close to Jesus and Mary, and the other apostles will be united with them around Peter. From the others, I will take away even what they think they have. Okay, let's look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 12. Okay, Matthew 13, verse 12. To anyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. From anyone who has not, even what he has will be taken away. In other words, you were ordained a priest, now this is going to be taken away. Just like Judas. This is why I speak to them in parables, because they look but do not see, and hear but do not listen or understand. So this fulfillment now will come. Then in Matthew 25, verse 29. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. But the one who has not, even what he has, will be taken away. So once again, the reaffirmment that that will be taken away. In other words, he can't function as a priest. Okay? Then in Mark chapter 4, verse 25. The same thing. To the one who has, more will be given. From the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. So it's the reaffirmment that this, yes, this is the power now that's coming. It's the assurance that Jesus is going to clean house, as it were. If you go to Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, chapter 15. First Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 10. But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace to me has not been ineffective. Indeed, I have toiled harder than all of them. Not I, however, but the grace of God that is within me. So those that are faithful will be working harder. By the grace of God. Okay? And in Galatians, chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1, verses 15 and 16. But when God, who from my mother's womb had set me apart and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me, salt flesh and blood. In other words, you are called. Even from the womb, the Lord knew who he wanted. And just like he called Judas, he knew Judas would betray him. He pointed that out in the earlier sections there in pages 20 to 35. Now he says, it must be so. I want priests of my church, clean in heart and faithful in responding to the immense love which I have loved each one of them and have chosen each one of them for myself, for the realization of the designs of my heart. Those who do not live in my friendship betray me and impede my work. They distract from the beauty of holiness that I would see shine in my church. I weep over their hardness of heart. My immaculate mother, their sorrowing mother, weeps with me over them. 1 Chronicles, chapter 16. Let's take a look at that.
Chapter 15.
Yeah, chapter 16.
16.
Yeah, 1 Chronicles chapter 16. Galatians 1.
It's after Samuel.
Huh?
It's after Samuel.
7.
Yeah.
Using my Bible, it'd be 360 something.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, 1 Chronicles chapter 16. Okay, 16 verse 29. But as the ark of the covenant of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, looked down from her window, and when she saw the King David leaping and dancing, she despised him in her heart. Now, this interpretation here, you can draw many conclusions from. When priests defile or take away from liturgy or shorten it or do whatever they want with liturgy, it's almost like what she's saying here. Here's the ark before, the king. It's the Holy of Holies. And then there's this dancing and revelry and all the rest of it. She saw this as a defilement in her heart because the ark was sacred. In the liturgy, the noise in our churches is like the revelry in the courtyard of the crucifixion. Or when they so-called allowed, quote, liturgical dancing, which to me was an abomination, because it reminds you of the dance Salome did before Herod, before the death of John the Baptist. Defilement of the Holy of Holies. So this is what they're referring to here. How much defilement is the Lord going to put up with? And so he is coming now to the point where he's beginning to end it. All right, we're going to stop here on page 49, and we'll continue there next week. I'd like for you to read up to page 54. And once again, just a reminder, if you need to purchase a copy of Sinu Jesu, please go to CatholicBook.net, or if you are in the Canton area, stop in here at St. Raphael Center, and you may purchase a copy. We hope now that your week will be filled with the joy of the Lord. And remember, keep holy the Sabbath day, and we'll see you next time with Sinu Jesu.